reading portions begin. First and foremost, thank you all for being here, for being present, for jamming with us. We're so excited to continue on to our 22nd year. This is an honor for my grandparents. And in true McGrath fashion, what my grandmother would force innocent public to do is all breathe together. So to begin this portion, let's all take a deep breath in, inhale, exhale. Let's get our Frederick Douglass on, Daddy. Take it over.
I got 2 minutes.
Yep, we're going to keep it tight. You have the rest of the day.
Having a producer as a daughter is rough. Every dinner is an occasion. Now, I'm more than half blind, so even though I have this in like 18 font, forgive me. Good afternoon. Welcome. Friends, neighbors, and Renaissance House family. Can we hear it for Renaissance House? If you don't know me, I'm Jason Rosen, also known as Papa J. Thank you. I gotta bring myself down from the show. Okay? I gotta say thank you for sharing with us the 22nd annual reading of Frederick Douglass's 1852 speech of what to the Negro is the 4th of July. It's what to the slave is the 4th of July. And today, we have to make it clear because it's not just Negroes. Everybody's got a rough time with what's going on today. Oh, you got freckles. Oh, yeah, for freckle people. So we're not all inclusive. This reading is a legacy of my parents, Abigail and Tony McGrath. The Renaissance House was their on-island literary program, and we endeavor to keep that going in some form, and we're working on it. To let you know, the Harlem Renaissance House is a program dedicated to the life and works of my grandmother, Lee Johnson, and my great aunt, Dorothy West. Both were significant members of the Harlem Renaissance during the 1920s and 1930s. I remember that well. The island was their summer refuge. It was their place out of the sweltering city and basically the ghetto in those days. And it's where they worked on their craft and had time to become creative, having fun. In those days, you could be a working class person and own a house on this island. Today, you could be a pair of doctors or lawyers and not be able to have a house on that island. But back then, regular folks, teachers, and my great-grandmother was a domestic. Lawrence's great-grandmother was domestic. They could have houses here. Real estate was egalitarian in that sense. Right? My mother started coming here in the 40s when she was a little girl, and I in the 60s when I was a little boy. Since then, those summers and the time we have here has defined our lives because it gave us the freedom to do something more than just a column machine. In reading Mr. Douglass's 1852 speech, every year we maintain a vigilance over injustice in our time. Even after more than 150 years, so much of the speech rings true in our time today. You can watch, I don't care what you watch, MSNBC or whatever. I stay off the Fox myself, but you go, what? Is that happening today? What did we fight for in the 60s? What were we doing in the 70s? The fight doesn't end, it continues. And in 1852, 150 years ago, this man risked everything. Right? This isn't like today, where the protest gets you maybe a fine and thrown in jail. This man, in 1852, slavery was at its height. There were slave catchers everywhere. He spoke for 3.5 hours alone, no amplification, to hundreds of people in church. Was it New Hampshire, I believe? Rochester. Good city. This man risked everything. And it begs the question, what are we willing to risk? Are we willing to risk our lives for what we believe in? Are we? We don't have to face what they face, what even our parents and grandparents face. All of you have stories going back down south of what it was like in those days, the Jim Crow days before. That has ended in one sense, but it hasn't really. We are still slaves, all of us. Doesn't matter what color you are. It's a different kind of slavery. We're slaves to our debt. We're slaves to propaganda manipulation. At this point, we don't know what's true and what's not, but we know what the past had to offer, and we can't be doomed to repeat it. Has anything changed in 150 years? Yeah, it has. It has. It's not where Martin Luther King's dream is supposed to be destined. There's still space, a lot of space, a lot of room to go. We must be optimistic that the American experiment is not a complete failure. We can right the ship. We can progress in civility and decency, no matter how bleak times may seem today. Don't give up. In his day, as I say, Franklin Douglass risked his freedom, his life, in order to effect change. Can we be as brave as him? Are we willing to risk it? It's a lot to ask, but his kind of bravery afforded us the ability to be here and not worry that there's a Klansman waiting to come in on us. All right? We need to muster up that bravery so that we can, so that we can have those freedoms that we all want. We can't take it for granted. That's what I want to leave you with. Don't take what you have for granted. Just because you got a big screen TV and an Escalade doesn't mean you've made it. We all know you haven't made it until your neighbor's made it, and their neighbor, and their neighbor. There's no one person making it and everybody else nothing. We all have to do it together. So I say this, please keep the fight, whatever your way is, all right? And right now I want to introduce a woman who has that kind of bravery, Miss Barbara Phillips.
As Jackson and many of us, of course, know, Abigail and Tony McGrath created Renaissance House over 20 years ago. And it was created as a retreat for writers motivated to create a just world. Abigail and Tony lived Amanda Gorman's poem, The Hill We Climb, which concludes, "We step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it. For there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it. If only we're brave enough to be it." And Abigail and Tony were brave enough to be it, and this is their legacy. We aim to fulfill Abigail's final dream, which was creating the Renaissance House Garden on her Oak Bluffs property here in the Highlands, to be a lasting space for community, creativity, and celebration of the arts. And so I hope you will join me in honoring Abigail and Tony and continue the legacy of the Harlem Renaissance here on this island, here in Oak Bluffs, by donating to this cause through her foundation, the Helene Johnson and Dorothy West Foundation for Artists in Need, so that we can all bring Abigail's vision to life. And I'm sure people at this desk can give you information about how to contribute to the foundation to make this garden happen. Thank you.
Thank you all, Auntie Barbara. QR code at the front table there. In the meantime, let's get our readers up here. To my right, we'll have odd numbers. come up, and then to my left, evens. We'll ask for numbers 1 through 20 first, and then we'll indicate the next group. And then we'll have you sit in an order that makes sense, and we'll get it started. Evens, odd. Odd, even.
Staging number 10.
Number 10. All right, from this side.
This is the even side.
One right here.
In the meantime, readers, I'll just give a little overview of the flow. Our first odd number will come out here. Our first even.
Hello, hello.
All right, if we can get this rocking, can I get the first number up here? 0.
I know, but we did 0. It's okay.
Testing 1, 2.
What to the slave is the 4th of July? Frederick Douglass on July 5th, 1852. Occasion, meeting sponsored by the Rochester Ladies Anti-Slavery Society, Rochester Hall, Rochester, New York. To illustrate the full shame of slavery, Douglass delivered a speech that took aim at the pieties of the nation, the cherished memories of its revolution, its principles of liberty, and its moral and religious foundation. The 4th of July, a day celebrating freedom, was used by Douglass to remind his audience of liberty's unfinished business.
Mr. President, friends, and fellow citizens, ladies and gentlemen, the distance between this platform and the slave plantation from which I escaped is considerable. and the difficulties to be overcome in getting from the latter to the former are by no means slight. That I am here today is, to me, a matter of astonishment as well as of gratitude. This, for the purpose of the celebration, is the 4th of July. It is the birthday of your national independence and of your political freedom. This, to you, is what the Passover was to the emancipated people of God. It carries your minds back to the day and to the act of your great deliverance, and to the signs and to the wonders associated with that act and with that day. This celebration also marks the beginning of another year of your national life. It reminds you that the Republic of America is now 76 years old. I am glad, fellow citizens, that your nation is so young. 76 years, though a good old age for a man, is but a mere spit in the life of a country. 70 years and 10 is the allotted time for individual man, but nations number their years by thousands. According to this fact, you are even now only in the beginning of your national career, still lingering in the period of childhood. I repeat, I am glad this is so. There is hope in the thought, and hope is much needed under the dark clouds which gather above the horizon. The eye of the reformer is met with angry flashes portending disastrous times, but his heart may well beat lighter at the thought that America is young, and that she is still in the impressible stage of her existence. May he not hope that high lessons of wisdom, of justice, and of truth will yet give direction to her destiny. Were the nation older, the patriot's heart might be sad, and the reformer's brow heavier. Its future might be shrouded in gloom, and the hope of the prophets go out in sorrow. There is consolation in the thought that America is young.
But your fathers, who had not adopted the fashionable idea of this day, of the infallibility of government and the absolute character of its acts, presume to differ from the home government in respect to the wisdom and the justice of some of those burdens and restraints. They went so far in their excitement as to pronounce the measures of government unjust, unreasonable, and oppressive, and altogether such as ought not to be quietly submitted to. I scarcely need say, fellow citizens, that my opinion of those measures fully accords with that of your fathers. Such a declaration on my part would not be worth much to anybody. It would certainly prove nothing as to what part I might have taken had I lived during the great controversy of 1776. To say now that America was right and that England wrong is exceedingly easy. Everybody can say it. The dastard, not less than the noble brave, can flippantly descant on the tyranny of England toward the American colonies. It is fashionable to do so. But there was a time when to pronounce against England and in favor of the cause of the colonies tried men's souls. Those who did so were accounted in their day plotters of mischief, agitators and rebels, dangerous men. To side with the right against the wrong, with the weak against the strong, and with the oppressed against the oppressor, here lies the merit.
and the one which, of all others, seems unfashionable in our day. The cause of liberty may be stabbed by the men who glory in the deeds of your fathers.
But to proceed, feeling themselves harshly and unjustly treated by the home government, their fathers, like men of honesty and men of spirit, earnestly sought redress. They petitioned and remonstrated. They did so in a decorous and respectful and loyal manner. Their conduct was wholly unexceptionable. This, however, did not answer the purpose. They saw themselves treated with sovereign indifference, coldness, and scorn. Yet they preserved. They were not the men to look back. As the sheet anchor takes a firmer hold when the ship is tossed by the storm, so did the cause of your fathers grow stronger as it breasted the chilling blast of kingly displeasures. The greatest of the best of British statements admitted its justice, and the loftiest of eloquence of British Senate came to its support. But with that blindness, which seems to be the unvarying characteristics of tyrants, since Pharaoh and his hosts were drowned in the Red Sea, the British government persisted in its action, plain off. The madness of this course, we believe, is admitted now, even by England, but we fear the lesson is wholly lost in our present rulers.
On the 2nd of July, 1776, the Old Continental Congress, to the dismay of the lovers of ease and the worshippers of property, clothed that dreadful idea with all the authority of national sanction. They did so in the form of a resolution. And as we seldom hit upon resolutions drawn up in our day, whose transparency is at an equal to this, it may refresh your minds and help my story if I read it. Resolved that these united colonies are, and of right, ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be dissolved. Citizens, your fathers made good the resolution. They succeeded, and to this day you reap the fruits of their success. The freedom gained is yours, and you therefore are properly celebrating this anniversary. The 4th of July is the first great fact in your nation's history, the very ring bolt in the chain of your yet undeveloped destiny. Pride and patriotism, not less than gratitude, prompt you to celebrate it, to hold it in a perpetual remembrance. I have said that the Declaration of Independence is the right bolt of the chain of your nation's destiny. So indeed I regard it. The principles contained in that instrument are saving principles. Stand by those principles. Be true to them at all occasions, in all places, against all foes, and at whatever cost.
How circumspect, exact, and proportionate were all their movements. How unlike the politicians of an hour. Their statesmen looked beyond the passing moment and stretched away in strength into the distant future. They seized upon external principles and set a glorious example in their defense. Mark them. Of this fundamental work, this day is the anniversary. Our eyes are met with demonstrations of joyous enthusiasm. Banners and pennants wave exultingly on the breeze.
The din of business, too, is hushed. Even Mammon seems to have quitted his grasp of this day. The ear-piercing fife and the stirring drum unite their accents with the ascending peal of 1,000 church bells. Prayers are made, hymns are sung, and sermons are preached in honor of this day. While the quick martial tramp of a great and multitudinous nation, echoed back by all the hills, valleys, and mountains of this vast continent, bespeak the occasion, one of thrilling and universal interests, nations jubilee.
Friends and citizens, I need not enter further into the causes which led to this anniversary. Many of you understand them better than I do. You could instruct me in regards to them. That is a branch of knowledge in which you feel perhaps a much deeper interest than your speaker. The causes which led to the separation of the colonies from the British Crown have never lacked for a tongue. They have all been taught in your common schools, narrated at your firesides, unfolded from your pulpits, and thundered from your legislative halls, and are as familiar to you as household words. They form the staple of your nation's poetry and eloquence. I remember also that as a people, Americans are remarkably familiar with all facts which make in their own favor. This is esteemed by some as a national trait, perhaps a national weakness. It is a fact that whatever makes for the wealth or the reputation of Americans and can be had cheap will be found by Americans. I shall not be charged with slandering Americans if I say I think the American side of any question may be safely left in American hands.
My business, if I have any here today, is with the present. The accepted time with God and His cause is the ever-living now. Trust no future, however pleasant. Let the dead past bury its dead. Act in the living present. Heart within and God overhead. We have to do with the past only as we can make it useful to the present and to the future. To all inspiring motives, to noble deeds which can be gained from the past, we are welcome. But now is the time, the important time. Your fathers have lived, died, and have done their work, and have done much of it well. You live and must die, and you must do your work. You have no right to wear out and waste the hard-earned fame of your fathers to cover your indolence. Sidney Smith tells us that men seldom eulogize the wisdom and virtues of their fathers, but to excuse some folly or wickedness of their own. This truth is not a doubtful one. There are illustrations of it near and remote, ancient and modern. It was fashionable hundreds of years ago for the children of Jacob to boast, "We have Abraham to our father," when they had long lost Abraham's faith and spirit. The people contented themselves under the shadow of Abraham's great name, while they repudiated the deeds which made his name great. Washington could not die till he had broken the chains of his slaves, yet his monument is built up by the price of human blood, and the traders in the bodies and souls of men shout, "We have Washington to our Father. Alas, that it should be so, yet so it is. The evil that men do lives after them. The good is oft interred with their thorns.
I, or those I represent, to do with your national independence. Fellow citizens, pardon me. Allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I, or those I represent, to do with your national independence? Are the great principles of political freedom and of national justice embodied in what Declaration of Independence extended to us? And am I, therefore, called upon to bring out humble offering to the national altar and to confess the benefits and express devout gratitude for the blessings resulting from your independence to us? Would to God, both for your sakes and ours, that an affirmative answer could be truthfully returned to these questions. Then would my task be light and my burden easy and delightful. For who is there so bold that a nation's sympathy could not warm him? Who so stolid and selfish that would not give the voice to swell the hallelujahs of a nation's jubilee, when the chains of servitude had been torn from the limbs? I am not that man. In a case like that, the dumb might eloquently speak, and the famed man leap as a hart.
But such is not the state of the case. I say it with a sad sense of the disparity between us. I am not included within the pale of this glorious anniversary. Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us, the blessings in which you, this day, rejoice, are not enjoyed in common. The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not by me. The sunlight that brought life and healing to you has brought stripes and death to me. This 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, I must mourn. To drag a man in fetters into the grand illuminated temple of liberty and call upon him to join you in joyous anthems were inhuman mockery and sacrilegious irony. Do you mean, citizens, to mock me by asking me to speak today? If so, there is a parallel to your conduct. And let me warn you that it is dangerous to copy the example of a nation whose crimes, lowering up to heaven, were thrown down by the breath of the Almighty, burying that nation in irrecoverable ruin. I can today take up the plaintive lament of a peeled and woe-smitten people. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down. Yea, we wept when we remembered Zion. We hanged our harps upon the willows in the midst thereof. For there they carried us away captive, required of us a song. And they who wasted us required of us mirth, saying, Sing us one of the songs of Zion. How can we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? If I forget thee, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget her coming. If I do not remember thee, let my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth.
Fellow citizens,
Above your national tumultuous joy, I hear the mournful wail of millions whose chains, heavy and grievous yesterday, are today rendered more intolerable by the jubilee shouts that reach them. If I do forget, if I do not faithfully remember those bleeding children of sorrow this day, may my right hand forget her coming, and may my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth. To forget them, to pass lightly over their wrongs, and to chime in with the popular theme would be treason most scandalous and shocking, and would make me a reproach before God and the world. My subject, then, fellow citizens, is American slavery. I shall see this day and its popular characteristics from the slave's point of view. Standing there, identified with the American bondman, making his wrongs mine, I do not hesitate to declare with all my soul that the character and conduct of this nation never looked blacker to me than on this 4th of July. Whether we turn to the declarations of the past or to the professions of the present, the conduct of this nation seems equally hideous and revolting. America is false to the past. She is false to the present. And she solemnly binds herself to be false to the future. Standing with God and the crushed and bleeding slave of this occasion, I will, in the name of humanity, which is outraged, in the name of liberty, which is fettered, in the name of the Constitution and the Bible, which are disregarded and trampled upon, dare to call in question and to denounce, with all the emphasis I can recommend, everything that serves to perpetuate slavery, the great sin and shame of America. I will not equivocate. I will not excuse. I will use the severest language I can command, and yet not one word shall escape me, that any man whose judgment is not blinded by prejudice and who is not at heart a slaveholder shall not confess to be right and just.
But I fancy I hear some of my audience say, it is just in this circumstance that you and your brother abolitionists fail to make a favorable impression on the public mind. Would you argue more and denounce less? Would you persuade more and rebuke less? Your cause would be so much more likely to succeed. But I submit, where all is plain, there is nothing to be argued. What point in the anti-slavery creed would you have me argue? On what branch of the subject do people of this country need life? Must I undertake to prove that the slave is a man? That point is conceded already. Nobody doubts it. The slaveholders themselves acknowledge it in the enactment of laws of our government. They acknowledge it when they punish disobedience on the part of slaves. There are 72 crimes in the state of Virginia which, if committed by a black man, no matter how ignorant he be, subject him to the punishment of death, while only 2 of the same crimes will subject a white man to the like punishment. What is this but the acknowledgement that the slave is a moral, intellectual, and responsible being? The manhood of the slave is conceded. It is admitted in the fact that Southern statute books are covered with enactments forbidding, under severe fines and penalties, the teaching of the slave to read or to write. When you can point to any such laws in reference to the beasts of the field, then I may consent to argue the manhood of the slave. When the dogs in your streets, when the fowls of the air, when the cattle on your hills, when the fish of the sea and the reptiles that crawl shall be unable to distinguish the slave from the brute, there I will argue with you that the slave is a man.
For the present, it is enough to affirm the equal manhood of the Negro race. Is it not astonishing that while we are plowing, planting, and reaping using all kinds of mechanical tools, erecting houses, constructing bridges, building ships, working in metals of brass, iron, copper, silver, and gold, that while we are reading, writing, and ciphering, acting as clerks, merchants, and secretaries, having among us lawyers, doctors, ministers, poets, authors, editors, orators, and teachers,
that while we are engaged in all manner of enterprises common to other men, digging gold in California, capturing the whale in the Pacific, feeding sheep and cattle on the hillside, living, moving, acting, thinking, planning, living in families as husbands, wives, and children, and above all, confessing and worshiping the Christian's God, and looking for the life and immortality beyond the grave, we are called upon to prove that we are men.
What? Am I to argue that it is wrong to make men brutes? To rob them of their liberty? To work them without wages? To keep them ignorant of their relations to their fellow men? To beat them with sticks? To flay their flesh with the lash? To load their limbs with irons? To hunt them with dogs? To sell them at auction? To sunder their families? To knock out their teeth, to hunt their flesh, to starve them into obedience and submission to their masters? Must I argue that a system thus marked with blood and stained with pollution is wrong? No, I will not. I have better employment for my time and strength than to argue arguments with them fine. What then remains to be argued? Is it that slavery is not divine? That God did not establish it? That our doctors of divinity are mistaken? There is blasphemy in the thought. That which is inhuman cannot be divine. Who can reason on such a proposition? They can make, I cannot. The time for such argument is past.
Would you have me argue that man is entitled to liberty and that he is the rightful owner of his own body? You have already declared it. What, may I argue, is the wrongfulness of slavery? Is that a question for Republicans? Is it to be settled by the rules of logic and argumentation as a matter beset with great difficulty involving a doubtful application of the principle of justice hard to be understood? How should I look today in the presence of Americans, dividing and subdividing their discourse to show that men have a natural right to freedom, speaking of it relatively and positively, negatively and affirmatively? To do so would be to make myself ridiculous and to offer an insult to your understanding. There is not a man beneath the canopy of heaven that does not know that slavery is wrong for him.
What
to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him, more than all other days of the year, the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham, your boasted liberty and unholy license, your national greatness, swelling vanity, your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless, your denunciations of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence, your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery, your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all your religious parade and solemnity, are to him mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy. A thin veil to cover up crimes, which would disgrace a nation of savages. There is not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of these United States at this very hour. Go where you may, search where you will, roam through all the monarchies and despotisms of the old world, travel through South America, search out every abuse, and when you have found the last, lay your facts by the side of everyday practices of this nation, and you will say with me that for revolting barbarity and shameless hypocrisy, America reigns without violence.
At a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument is needed. Oh, had I the ability, and could I reach the nation's ear, I would, today, pour out a fiery stream of biting ridicule, blasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke. For it is not light that is needed, but fire. It is not the gentle shower, but thunder. We need the storm, the whirlwind, and the earthquake. The feeling of the nation must be quickened. The conscience of the nation must be roused. The propriety of the nation must be startled. The hypocrisy of the nation must be exposed, and its crimes against God and man must be proclaimed and denounced.
Take the American slave trade, which we are told by the papers is especially prosperous right now. Ex-Senator Benton tells us that the price of men was never higher than now. He mentions the fact to show that slavery is in no danger. This trade is one of the peculiarities of American institutions. It is carried on in all the large towns and cities in one half of this confederacy, and millions are pocketed every year by dealers in this horrid traffic. In several states, this trade is a chief source of wealth. It is called, in contradiction to the foreign slave trade, the internal slave trade. It is probably called so too in order to divert from it the horror with which the foreign slave trade is contemplated. That trade has long since been denounced by this government as piracy. It has been denounced with burning words in the high places of the nation as an execrable traffic. To arrest it, to put an end to it, this nation keeps a squadron at immense cost on the coast of Africa. It is, however, a notable fact that while so much execration is men engaged in the slave trade between the states pass without condemnation, and their business is deemed honorable.
Behold, the practical operation of this internal slave trade, the American slave trade, sustained by American politics and American religion. Here you will see men and women reared like swine for the market. You know what is a swine drover. I will show you a man drover. They inhabit all our southern states. They preambulate the country and crowd the highways of the nation with droves of human stock. You will see one of these human flesh robbers, armed with pistol, whip, and bowie knife, driving a company of 100 men, women, and children from the Potomac to the slave market of New Orleans. These wretched people are to be sold singly or in lots to suit purchasers. They are food for the cotton field and the deadly sugar mill. Mark the sad procession as it moves wearily along, and the inhuman wretch who drives them. Hear his savage yells and his blood-chilling oaths as he hurries on his affrighted captives. There, see the old man with locks thin and gray. Cast one glance, please, upon the young mother whose shoulders are bare to the scorching sun, her grimy tears falling on the brow of the babe in her arms. See to that girl of 13 weeping, yes, weeping, as she thinks of the mother from whom she has been torn. The drove moves tardily. Heat and sorrow have nearly consumed their strength. Suddenly you hear a quick snap, like the discharge of a rifle. The fetters clank and the chain rattles simultaneously. Your ears are saluted with a scream that seems to have torn its way to the center of your soul. The crack you heard was the sound of the slave whip. The scream you heard was from the woman you saw with the baby. Her speed had faltered under the weight of her child and her chains, and that gash on her shoulder tells her to move on. Follow this drove to New Orleans. Attend the auction. See men examined like horses. See the forms of women rudely and brutally exposed to the shocking gaze of American slave buyers. See this drove sold and separated forever, and never forget the deep, sad sobs that arose from that scattered multitude. Tell me, citizens, where, under the sun, can you witness a spectacle more fiendish and shocking? Yet this is but a glance at the American slave trade as it exists at this moment in the ruling part of the United States.
I was born amid such sights and scenes. To me, the American slave trade is a terrible reality. When a child, my soul was often pierced with a sense of its horrors. In the deep, still darkness of midnight, I have been often aroused by the deadly, heavy footsteps and the piteous cries of the chain gangs that passed our way. Fellow citizens, this murderous traffic is today in active operation in this boasted republic. So the solicitude of my spirit, I see clouds of dust remain on the highways in the south. I owe the bleeding footsteps. I hear the doleful wail of faltering humanity on its way to the slave markets, where the victims are in the act of being treated like horses, sheep, and swine, knocked off the highest bidder. There I see the intimate ties ruthlessly broken to gratify the lust, caprice, and rapacity of the buyers and sellers of men. My soul sickens at this sight. But a still more inhuman, disgraceful, and scandalous state of things remains to be presented. By an act of the American Congress, not yet 2 years old, slavery has been nationalized in the most horrible and revolting form. By that act, Mason and Dixon's line has been obliterated. New York is Virginia. And the power to hold, hunt, and sell men, women, and children as slaves remains no longer a mere state institution, but it is now an institution of the whole United States. The power is coextensive with the Star-Spangled Banner and American Christianity. Where they go, men also go the merciless slave hunting. Where they are, man is not sacred. He is a bird for the sportsman's gun. For black men, there are neither laws, justice, humanity, nor religion. The fugitive slave law makes mercy to them of crime, justice, humanity, and bribes the judges who tries them. An American judge gets $10 for every victim he co-signs to slavery, and 5 when he fails to do so.
I take this law to be one of the grossest infringements of Christian liberty. And if the churches and ministers of our country were not stupidly blind or most wickedly indifferent, they too would regard it. At the very moment that they are thanking God for the enjoyment of civil and religious liberty and for the right to worship God according to the dictates of their own consciences, they are utterly silent in respect to a law which robs religion of its chief significance and makes it utterly worthless to a world lying in wickedness. Did this law concern the mint, anise, and cumin abridge the right to sing psalms or partake of the sacrament, or to engage in any of the ceremonies of religion? It would be smitten by the thunder of 1,000 pulpits. A general shout would go up from the church, demanding repeal, instant repeal.
But the church of this country is not only indifferent to the wrongs of the slave, it actually takes sides with the oppressors. It has made itself the bulwark of American slavery and the shield of American slave hunters. For my part, I would say welcome infidelity, welcome atheism, welcome anything in preference to the gospel as preached by those divine. They convert the very name of religion into an engine of tyranny. These ministers make religion a cold and flinty-hearted thing, having neither principles of right action nor bowels of compassion. They strip the love of God of its beauty and leave the throne of religion a huge, horrible, repulsive form. It is a religion for oppressors, tyrants, man-stealers, and thugs. In speaking of the American church, however, let it be distinctly understood that I mean the great mass of the religious organizations of our land. There are exceptions, and I thank God that there are. Americans, your Republican politics, not less than your Republican religion, are flagrantly inconsistent. You boast of your love of liberty, your superior civilization, and your pure Christianity, while the whole political power of the nation, as embodied in the two great political parties, is solemnly pledged to support and perpetuate the enslavement of 3 million of your countrymen. You hurl your anathemas at the crowded, headed tyrants of Russia and Austria, and pride yourselves on your democratic institution, while you yourselves consent to the mere tools and bodyguards of the tyrants of Virginia and Carolina. Your glory in your refinement and your universal education Yet you maintain a system as barbarous and dreadful as ever stained the character of a nation. A system begun in ignorance, supported in pride, and perpetuated in cruelty. You are all on fire at the mention of liberty for France or for Ireland, but are as cold as an iceberg at the thought of liberty for the enslaved of America. You discourse eloquently on your dignity of labor, yet you sustain a system which in its very essence casts a stigma upon labor.
You can bare your bosom to the storm of British artillery to throw off a 3-penny tax on tea, and yet bring the last hard-earned farthing from the grasp of the black laborers of your country. You profess to believe that of one blood God made all nations of men to dwell on the face of all the earth, and hath commanded all men everywhere to love one another, yet you notoriously hate and glory in your hatred. All men whose skins are not colored like your own. You declare before the world and are understood by the world to declare that you hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And yet, you hold securely in a bondage which, according to your own Thomas Jefferson, is worse than ages of that which your fathers rose in rebellion to oppose a seventh part of the inhabitants of your country. Fellow citizens, I will not enlarge further on your national inconsistencies. The existence of slavery in this country brands your republicanism as a sham, your humanity as a base pretense, and your Christianity as a lie. It destroys your moral power abroad. It corrupts your politicians at home. It saps the foundation of religion. It makes your name a hissing, and by a word to a mocking earth. It is the antagonistic force in your government, the only thing that seriously disturbs and endangers your union. It fetters your progress. It is the enemy of improvement, the deadly foe of education. It fosters pride. It breeds insolence. It promotes vice. It shelters crime. It is a cursed earth that supports it. And yet, you cling to it as if it were the sheet anchor of all your hopes. Oh, be warned. Be warned. A horrible reptile is coiled up in your nation's bosom. The venomous creature is nursing at the tender breast of your youthful republic. For the love of God, tear away and fling from you the hideous monster, and let the weight of 20 millions crush and destroy it forever.
I have detained my audience entirely too long already. At some future period, I will gladly avail myself of the opportunity to give this subject a full and fair discussion. Allow me to say, in conclusion, notwithstanding the dark picture I have this day presented of the state of the nation, I do not despair of this country. The arm of the Lord is not shortened, and the doom of slavery is certain. I therefore leave off where I began, with hope, while drawing encouragement from the Declaration of Independence, the great principles it contains, and the genius of American institutions. My point is also cheered by the obvious tendencies of the age. Nations do not stand in the same relation to each other that they did ages ago. No nation can now shut itself off from the surrounding world and trot around to the same old path of their fathers without interference. Intelligence is penetrating the darkest corners of the globe. It makes its pathway over and under the sea, as well as on the earth. Wind, stream, and lightning are to be chartered agents.
Oceans no longer divide but link nations together. From Boston to London is now a holiday excursion. Space is comparatively annihilated. Thoughts expressed on one side of the Atlantic are distinctly heard on the other. The far-off and almost fabulous Pacific rolls in grandeur everywhere.
The celestial umpire, the mystery of ages, is being solved. The fiat of the Almighty let there be light, has not yet spent the force. No abuse, no outrage, whether in taste, sport, or artists, can now hide itself from the all-pervading light.
The iron shoe and crippled foot of China must be seen in contrast with nature. Africa must rise and put on her yet unwoven garment. Ethiopia shall stretch out her hand unto God. In the fervent aspirations of William Lord Garrison, I say, and let every heart join in saying it.
God speed the day when human blood shall cease to flow, and every clime be understood, the claims of human brotherhood, and each return for evil, good, not blow for blow. That day will come, all feuds the end, and change into a faithful friend, each foe.
God, speed the hour, the glorious hour, when none on earth shall exercise a lordly power, nor in a tyrant's presence cower, but all to manhood's stature tower by equal birth.
I want to say to everyone that what you have done today and what has happened every year for 22 years is uplift and elevate yourselves, but also everyone around you. I look around and I'm starting to hear stories about when things started, and I'm hearing that it was a potluck on the beach and people would read to each other. It was in people's backyards. We used to sort of guerrilla ourselves onto April Beach and read and pray nobody fell over the cables. But the point here is that you try. And you do it in your backyard, you do it in your kitchen, you do it at church, you teach your kids. We didn't have children this year. I want some next year, so please everybody. For your kids. Because those of us who know, but we have to teach. And you teach by example. I have been taught by example. And today Miss Caroline in the water at Color Bear Plunge said something, and I thought, she has beautiful circles, so do we. They ebb and they flow, and they ever keep all of the energy that you all bring. So if you can't come next year, come the year after. Send your friends, because this is so very important. And finally, thank you to readers, some of whom have been with us 22 years. And then his son took the baton. Thank you to my brave, witnessed people who said, we'll read if somebody doesn't show up. Thank you to some of my readers who so graciously said, I've had a turn at this, let them have one. So, inclusivity is always rooted in kindness and empathy, and a willingness to listen and receive what you hear. And I hope that's what happened here today. A little housekeeping for my new readers, the people who were not on the list and who showed up brave and strong. If you would stay for a minute, because I do want to make sure we have all of your information. And we'll be here ready